Hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge, back once again with another episode of the series I'm calling Valiant to the Last. And for this one, something a bit different, something I wasn't planning on. I'm not actually going to show you a deluxe hardcover edition. I know that was the plan for this series. The plan was to go through all my deluxe hardcover editions, reading them for the first time ever and telling you what I thought as I went along. But we've now reached a point where it makes sense for me to carry on reading a particular series of comics, but those comics haven't been collected in deluxe hardcovers. As such, I read them in single issues. As such, I'm not going to bother doing an overview because I don't do overviews and stuff like that. But what I will do is I'll talk to you about what issues I've read, what I thought about them, and what I'm going to do next. So, now, last week's episode, I did Faith, Deluxe Edition Volume 1. Whilst it says Volume 1 on the spine, it doesn't actually have a Volume 2 that's been released or even solicited as yet, and it seems pretty unlikely that's going to happen because it's now been several years, and Valiant is now under new and much less effective management when it comes to these things. So, that deluxe edition ended with the second series of Faith on issue 8. So, what I then read is what you can see here, which is issue 9. I also read issue 10, 11, and 12, which I'll show you in a second. And so that comprises a 4 issue final arc of that series before that series comes to an end. And that arc was called The Faithless. And I have to say, it was very good. I enjoyed it. It was a really good ending to the same kind of feel good storyline. It brought back a lot of the characters that we'd already seen. It was just good, decent, fun comics. Not amazing, not going to blow you away, but much like the rest of the Faith comics I've read so far, so the deluxe edition from last week, it was just good. It was fun. It was enjoyable. It's recommended. Yeah, it was great. So moving on from that, there have then been two miniseries released subsequent to that. The first one, and this is the one that I read next, is called Faith and the Future Force. And I'll tell you this right now, Faith and the Future Force is goddamn amazing. It is such a good series. Like it is so good. So recommended. I don't want to give any spoilers because I never do about what it's about. It involves time travel. You probably worked it out from the Future Force tagline. Obviously, it's about faith. It also introduces a new character who, from what I gather, has probably been introduced previously, I think, in the Ivar Time Walker series, which I haven't as yet got to, but had already been released by the time this series came out. And I'll be honest, it was fine reading it. It was really enjoyable reading it. I didn't feel lost mainly because I know Ivar Time Walker exists as a character. I know there's a wider Valiant universe. So I'm assuming at this stage that this character that comes into Faith's life here is from that series and from that part of the Valiant universe. Well, again, once you take that on board, the rest of the story, great, brilliant, lots of fun. Something to keep in mind is by the time you get to say issue 3 or issue 4 of this, you're dealing with the entire Valiant universe. This is like it's quite light-hearted, but it's essentially a huge universe-wide maxi event that contains literally everybody, from Livewire to Manowar to Rye to Bloodshot to the Renegade Generation Zero, Quantum Woody, Archer and Armstrong, Immortal Warrior. The list goes on. Literally everyone you can think of features in this, but they feature in it in a relatively superficial, quick way, which means that, for me at least, reading this with the awareness that there's a whole load of Valiant characters and so on that I have yet to read, but that do exist in the Valiant universe, it was fine. It totally made sense. And if anything, it made me more interested and more excited about reading more of the universe. In and of itself, though, this arc does make complete sense as long as you go into it with just the vaguest idea that the Valiant universe exists and has other characters in it. Um, and that one of them kind of involved time travel at some stage, which literally is all I know. I know the name Ivar Time Walker because I have the deluxe edition called Ivar Time Walker. And that's all you really need to know. It's kind of like reading a Marvel comic and being like, okay, I know mutants are a thing, and Avengers are the thing, and the Hulk's somewhere out there doing something. Then that's pretty much fine for a lot of Marvel comics. You're good to jump into the universe. That's what I'd say about Faith in the Future Force. It was awesome and highly recommended. Moving on, we then have Faith's Winter Wonderland Special, which is a one shot that comes or was released straight after Faith in the Future Force. This sucks. It's not written by Jodie Houser. I don't know who it's written by, Marguerite something, and it's fine, but it's a very transposable story. It could have been written by literally anyone in any comic universe about any comic character. You could have had this written about Superman, you could have had this written about Daredevil, you could have had this written about Fate from Valiant. So, do you know what? Wasn't interested, wasn't impressed. Um, Following that, the final miniseries and the final four issues we're going to look at is Faith Dreamside, which is a set of four single issues that again just continue the narrative arc very smoothly on from Faith and the Future Force. And I'll be honest, loads of fun. It was just good. Again, keeping in mind with the tone of the normal Faith comics, which is kind of light-hearted, kind of feel good, but with an undercurrent of strong characterization, good art, and decent, compelling storytelling that evolves the characters and progresses the story forward. So in this case, we see the return of one of the. It's another Sire. I think it's someone from Generation Zero at this stage. I mean, if you've been reading along with me, you've read as much as I have, so you'll probably be about as vaguely familiar as I am. So one of them, they come back into it. That's very cool. Also, this involves Faith speaking to the death-defying Dr. Mirage, or Dr. Mirage from the series, Death-defying Dr. Mirage. I know nothing, again, about Dr. Mirage at all. I literally knew nothing about it. I know the series exists because, again, I have a deluxe edition on my shelf called The Death-defying Dr. Mirage. I know that contains two series, the normal Dr. Mirage series and subsequently another series called Dr. Mirage Second Lives. Faith Dreamside is clearly set after Second Lives because they mention that term here somewhere. Um, and then knowing literally what I've just told you, was enough for me to go into it and to read this comic and be like, yeah, cool. There's some kind of like weird Doctor Death fantasy, clairvoyant, magic powers, ghosts thing going on, which I'm aware of. I'm aware Shadow Man exists because, again, I have those on my shelf and I've seen the Nintendo 64 game. I don't know anything about it, but I'm aware that there's another part of the Valiant universe, and this is another example of Faith intersecting with that in a way that isn't inconsistent, that maintains a decent narrative arc, and is a good story. So there you have it, everyone. Faith, the uncollected volume, as it were, is 13 issues. So the last four issues of the second series of Faith, issues 9, 10, 11, 12, all of Faith Future Force, the Winter Wonderland one shot, which I wouldn't recommend, and then Faith Dreamside. And that's the order to read them in. I've got to say, generally, it was really good. It was as good as the first volume. No, in fact, it was better than the first volume because that Future Force mini event was just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Loved it. Um, what am I going to do next? Well, to be honest, it's a bit confusing now because I hadn't expected to enjoy the Faith comics at all. I'd heard lots of mixed things. And I wasn't entirely sure it'd be up my street. It's totally up my street. I love it, and unfortunately, is not collected as deluxe editions. And I do like my deluxe edition. So what I'm going to do, I think, is at some point in the next year or two, I might actually make myself a deluxe edition hardcover of Faith Volume Two. Um, if you're new to my channel, you don't know what that means. Basically, it is possible to make your own comics by doing custom binds and custom prints. And I've got a whole other playlist on my channel about that, going into painfully exhaustive detail, mainly because people keep on asking me the same questions over and over again, which are different ways of saying, can you do it for me? Which is obviously the answer is no. Um, but yeah, what I'm going to do in this case, I think I'm going to make a Faith Volume 2 because this is just off the hook. It was really fun, really, really enjoyable. When I do make it, spoiler warning, I am not going to be including Winter Wonderland because it was rubbish. Um, but yeah, I think that's my next plan with respect to Faith. I wasn't expected to go down this route, guys, but I think I'm going to have to. All right, so what's next on our list? Next, I think, is going to be Generation Zero, which is a limited series. It's a maxi series, I think 8 issues or something, which started being released early on in the timeline of the Faith single issues. Um, but it barely gets mentioned in the Faith issue, so there's no kind of discontinuity there. So I'm going to step back a bit. I'm going to go back in the reading order and jump into Generation Zero. Unfortunately, that is also not a collected series. It's not collected as a deluxe hardcover. I think only because there's 8 issues. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read that next. And if you want to read that along with me, then yeah, dig out the trades of the single issues. I think it's collected in 2 different trade paperbacks. I haven't picked them up yet, but I'm going to go to my friend's comic shop and pick them up next week and read them. And I will catch you guys next week for another deluxe edition, but not quite, installment of Valiant to the Last. Thanks for watching. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.